head honcho of U.S. tax and financial services, to which we're very grateful for an awful lot of what's going on in this conference, but also the tremendous expertise that she brings to us and the understanding of our problems. So, Darlene, you've got it.
Thank you, ladies. I have to say I'm very impressed with your organization here, and I wish I would have gotten involved a lot sooner, to be honest. And I'm very proud and pleased, and I'm excited, actually, about getting more involved with y'all. Because a voice in Congress is something that I'm a lone voice. They're getting tired of hearing me on my own. And I have no qualms of going and talking into various congressional committees and stuff. And I've definitely sat in my fair share, screaming very loudly because it bothers me, and I'm very much of an American, and I do care about the legislation, and I care about how legislation actually affects the United States of America and how they're treating their Americans abroad. Anyway, I'll get off my rule. Podium now. One of the things that I think, ladies, the biggest issue that we've seen, and the reason that the United States government are going after those 7 million Americans living abroad is because they have not increased the tax rates. They've talked about it, and they've continued to talk about it, but they have not increased tax rates. Okay, more than likely next year you will probably see some kind of increase, but they've got to broaden their base. 3.4 billion was raised out of 33,000 people who came through those voluntary disclosure programs that you've all read about and heard about. 3.4 billion out of 33,000 people. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. Okay, so the U.S. is not going to stop. And a lot of that is not just from Americans living abroad, it's also from a lot of Americans living in the United States who have their assets abroad. The U.S., how many people immigrated to the United States? The majority of the people that we helped, right? In fact, the majority of the clients in our Swiss office are Americans who have assets in Switzerland, but don't necessarily live there.
I'm really sorry. I meant to say that another thing that people say to me all the time is, oh, my bank is a non-American. I have double nationality. They're non-American. Forget that. Where were you born? I said this just to somebody the other day. Where were you born? Maryland. Well, you think your bank doesn't know you're American? Dual nationality, as you pointed out earlier, but you didn't necessarily put the nail on the head. Dual nationality is not a protection for you.
And the most important thing is, under this FATCA legislation, this Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, the U.S. government is not the only government who is looking to their citizens who have assets worldwide. Getting the banking, financial institutions of the world to report on who their customers are to the appropriate authorities. Trust me, France is looking at it, Germany is looking at it, England's looking at it. There are a hell of a lot of countries out there who are interested in implementing their own FATCA-type legislation. Very similar. So this is not just the U.S. going after their American citizens living abroad. But one of the issues that I showed Margaret here just earlier today, one of my colleagues in London, our Swiss office, gave us a copy of a letter from Credit Suisse. Credit Suisse jumped on the bandwagon for FATCA back in 2010. Okay, right when it was first. Actually, they started looking at it prior to it, the legislation being passed. Many banks see this as a money-making venture, okay, because they are going to be charging for the additional reporting requirements that they need to do for their American clients. Okay, this is not something they're going to do for free. And in fact, they're going to have a lot of the other banks custody their U.S. assets at Credit Suisse, and they're going to be charging for it. So it's a money-making issue. It is not necessarily a bad thing. Well, it is for us, but I mean, these banks are asking for information that they're going to ask you the questions, and if you're willing to lie and perjure yourself on a bank form, this is something I would not highly recommend. They're going to ask you the direct question. Were you born in the United States? Are you an American citizen? What about your parents? Is you an American? Is your mother an American? Or your father an American? You start getting a 5-page questionnaire, and they want to know who your tax preparer is, and have filed your 2010 U.S. income tax return, I mean, a 4-page questionnaire is going out to all Credit Suisse clients, asking them these questions. And if they don't reply, by July 1, their account's closed. End of story. That's a newsflash for all of those from Switzerland. Credit Suisse just sent those letters out last week, and we got a couple of copies of them if you're interested. But this is not the only bank who's asking those kind of information. We have offices in London, we have offices in Israel. In Israel, the major banking institutions down there are doing the exact same thing. So the banks, if they're going to deal in dollars, and they are, they're not going to stop dealing in dollars, they're going to be asking these questions. The same question that you have, I get it daily. I get it daily. Well, how will they ever know? Number one, if you were born in the United States, the banks already know. If you've made any transfers to and from the United States, they will assume that you have a U.S. connection. Yeah. Well, a lot of people haven't given their U.S. passports. A lot of them have given their dual national passport. But you know, on your foreign passport, it does say where you were born. Anyway, the issue is, are you willing to lie on the bank forms that are being sent to you? And it doesn't matter how old you are, whether you're a baby or not. If you are earning money and you're an American citizen, you have a tax return to file. Yes, expatriated. Now, there's so many people who are looking to expatriate. In fact, Bern has just added 2 more people. They only had 1 person before. Now they have 3 people who will actually meet with individuals who are interested in expatriation. And there's no reason. Why do you...
That means giving up your American citizenship.
Sorry. Expatriating means giving up your U.S. citizenship. And there's an awful lot of people who do give up their U.S. citizenship. Yes?
Isn't there a tax penalty? Isn't there a payment penalty that must be paid if you do that?
Well, it really depends on how wealthy you are and what your asset base is. Okay? And to be honest with you, in 2008, when everyone's value decreased substantially, there was an awful lot of people who were able to expatriate without paying any exit tax. Now, the exit tax is, if you are a dual national at birth, all right, that's an exception. You can have 50 million worth of assets, worth of net worth, and not suffer any exit tax. There's various exceptions to the rule, so you have to get some advice. Don't assume that you're going to be paying tax just because you're exiting or giving up your U.S. citizenship. The exception is a renunciation. A renunciation is really for a lot of people who have, well, no, some people just get pissed off at having to file tax returns. You know, it's not just for people who are wealthy, it's for people who are lived abroad for 10, 20, 30 years, have no intention of ever going back to the United States, and are just sick of paying someone like us to do their tax return. You know, what can I say? It's everybody under the planet.
Can I ask a question about dual nationality? All that.
We're going to talk about this some more on Saturday.
We're going to have a big discussion on